Do you love audiobooks? You can get a free 30-day trial membership to audible.com by visiting audibletrial.com/divebarrockstar. They have thousands of audiobook titles, as well as podcasts, guided wellness programs, theatrical performances, A-list comedy, and exclusive Audible originals you won't find anywhere else. Get your free trial membership at audibletrial.com/divebarrockstar. Welcome to the Dive Bar Rockstar podcast, a show exploring the lives of professional musicians of all types, touring musicians, recording artists, songwriters, engineers, bar bands, wedding bands, and anyone making their living in the music industry. Whether you've dreamed of being a professional or you already are one, this is the podcast for you. I'm your host, Eric Baines, and I hope that you not only find some entertainment here, but also some helpful tips, trade secrets, and ideas that will help you achieve your dreams. I try to keep these episodes down to less than an hour and a half. Really, I'd like to be closer to an hour, but I fail at it every single time. Because as a listener of podcasts and a fan of podcasts, I kind of prefer a little shorter. They're easy to take in during the day, an hour and 15, maybe 53 minutes might be the ideal to me. But I wanted to reach out to you as the listener to get your opinions on what you think and if this is a good length and if you're enjoying this or if this is usually too much. This episode will be split into two different episodes because it went long. We talked over 2 hours, and we mentioned that in the podcast, so don't be confused because at the end of the day, I think the podcast will be about an hour and 25 minutes, but we do mention that we went over 2 hours, which we did. We talked for 2 hours, and then I edited it down over the course of 12 hours or so. It is a lot of work. But anyways, let me know what you think about the length of a podcast and whether these are good or bad. You can email me at fanmail@divebarrockstar.com. You could comment on YouTube if you wanted. You could hit me up on Instagram. I'm Dive Bar Rockstar. Or there's the Dive Bar Rockstar podcast page on Facebook. So anyway, you can get a hold of me. Let me know what you think. I'd love to hear your opinions. And speaking of my guest, we've been friends for 20 years. He's one of the first people that I met when I moved out to LA. He's the author of the book, The Amazing Adventures of a Marginally Successful Musician, which is a really, really fun read. It ties in really well with what this, what the mission statement of this podcast is. It's all about working musicians. He's toured and recorded with many, many people. A few of which Peter Asher, Boz Scaggs, The Fray, Jerry and the Pacemakers, Denny Lane, Chad and Jeremy, the Bay City Rollers, Graham Nash, Lyle Lovett, Stevie Nicks, Zooey Deschanel. He was also the last touring bassist with Neil Diamond before Neil retired, and he played on a couple records with Neil as well. So he's a great guy. He's a great bass player. He's a great singer. So please enjoy my conversation with Bill Cinque. We first met at the Brass Elephant. I don't know if you even remember, but the first time I ever walked in there was a Wednesday night, and there was you guys were having a singer-songwriter night at some point on Wednesdays. I think it was you and Eric Stagen on keyboards and Christopher Alice.
Maybe, yeah.
And Bobby Williams.
Yeah.
And I walked in, and at the time, I was a guy who played numerous bars and didn't drink as well. I ordered a Diet Coke, and Dave at the bar just almost died laughing, and it was pretty funny.
Now, do you remember that night though? Because you were pretty new to LA at the time, or?
Yeah, I'm thinking that was maybe January. I had moved here in October.
Okay, I'll tell you how well I remember that night.
Oh, okay.
I was playing. I had a tiny little bass amp, and our good friend, the dearly departed Bobby Williams, who
yes,
was one of our great friends.
Yeah.
Bobby says to me, I was doing a lot of different stuff at the time, so I couldn't really commit to every Wednesday at this place at the Brass Elephant. So Bobby said, "Look, if you don't mind, maybe I'll bring in guys to kind of audition while you're here." And I said, "Of course." This one night he said, I just got a call from this guy, Eric. I think he's from Colorado, and he's going to come in. And I hope that's not uncomfortable for you. And I said, no. Now, if you remember, you walked in, and I came over and said hello to you right away because I was like, no, I want this guy to feel comfortable. I was looking at the amp with you saying, okay, if you want to adjust it, I don't care.
Right.
And now maybe I'll embarrass you.
Okay.
Because I'm thinking, well, this poor young kid from the mountains of Colorado doesn't know anything about the big city, so I'm going to be the daddy here and take him under my wing and show him. And this guy named Eric Baines, who I've never heard of, never seen, gets up and plays and sings so well, so ridiculously well. And I looked at Bobby. I said, well, I guess the gig is in good hands now because I was thinking of quitting. I think now I just got fired because you were stellar. You were great.
Well,
But I remember thinking like, well, you're younger than I am, and I'm going to show you the ropes here and show you about the amp.
Right.
You did just fine. You did just fine.
Well, thank you. I wasn't fishing for that story.
No, I remember it. I was surprised that you remembered it.
Yeah, well, I was going to say that it was interesting because I came from Denver, and I came up through the bars, 3, 4, or 5 nights a week. So it was that atmosphere wasn't new to me by any means, but it's a sort of at that time it was. Now there was, well, it doesn't exist now, but eventually there was a big stage on the other side. This was just like a tiny bar at the time. You guys were playing behind a pole.
Oh, there was a pole right in the way. You couldn't put the speakers up. You had to put one of the speakers on the walkway up to the restroom.
Right.
If you remember.
Yeah, exactly. And so if you walked into a bar that was like that in Denver, generally the band's probably not going to be very good. I don't want to put anybody down from Denver. There's tons of awesome musicians, but not as many as LA. And it just struck me when I walked in, I was like, this is a Wednesday night in Monrovia, which if you're not familiar with LA, it's barely even in LA. It's
Yes.
It's out past Pasadena.
That's what everybody says. It's like beyond Pasadena, everything is a Thelma and Louise, right? You go right off the cliff. It's the Flat Earth Society. There's something out there past Pasadena, but we don't know what it is.
Right. So I was just struck by the quality of musicianship and the songs, and I was like, it was just more evidence that I'd made the right decision in moving out here.
Well, I remember hearing your.
Awesome.
Well, thank you. I mean, that was a cool little band, and it was a kind of a goofy little place. But I remember specifically, I probably handed you my card, and we traded numbers, and I honestly kind of watched you rise up through the ranks because I started hearing from my other friends, there's a bass player, Eric. And I said, Eric Baines? Yeah, I don't know much about him. I go, no, I know him. I met him 6 months ago and a year ago and 2 years ago. And, I was there when you played the Staples Center.
Oh, wow. Yes.
I was in the audience when you were playing.
Did you come with Bobby?
With High School Musical, yes.
Yeah, that's right. It was like 10 people that Bobby had, and you guys had.
Yeah, we came with 10 people. There was another 22,000 ahead of us.
Of course.
And that was you and, of course, our great friend, Chad Wright, the greatest drummer in the world, who has also been on this show. And
wow.
I mean, if you folks out there in podcast land ever get a chance to hear Eric and Chad play as a rhythm section, it's pretty special. I mean, I've had the pleasure of being on stage in front of you guys singing while you guys are playing, and it's a bit of a freight train. I mean, you guys are the greatest rhythm section in town.
Well, thank you. You get to be on the show every week now.
I'm a pretty good wingman. Yeah, I'm like the Ed McMahon on these kind of shows. But
well, that's interesting. I honestly didn't expect that story, but that's kind of cool. I mean, for one, that means we've known each other 20 years almost. October will be 20 years of me being here.
Yeah,
which is kind of awesome. And the Brass Elephant then became. Me and Bobby were best friends for years up until he died, and I ended up being at the Brass Elephant sometimes 4 nights a week because we just hung out there, and then since we played there so often, the drinks were always free. So
that's another good reason to be there.
But speaking of Bobby, he was a band leader that how do I put this? Like on stage, he would kind of just call whatever songs, and if you kind of knew it, great. And it was almost he preferred that you didn't know it because he enjoyed to mess with the arrangements, and it was you had to be on your toes musically, and which was a lot of fun. But at the same time, sometimes it was frustrating if I really knew the song and I really missed a part that wasn't on there. And I wonder what your take on it as you've played 5,500 gigs apparently, but all of them not bars of it.
Yeah.
Obviously, but
honestly, this is amazing that you would say this because a lot of the time I really did not like it. Now, I learned to love it. And if I can, this is hardly dropping a name because it's most people under the age of maybe 55 won't even know who this person is. But back, I did all the British invasion people, as you know. I did, Peter and Gordon and Chad and Jeremy and the Searchers and, on and on. But one of the guys that was a big Beatle, part of the Beatles story was a guy by the name of Tony Sheridan, if you've ever heard of him.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I think Tony passed away a couple of years ago, but I got the chance to play with Tony.
Wow.
Now, here is why I bring this up. Our friend Bobby that we were talking about that would put us in these situations where he didn't even yell out a key, and he would play a fast song really slow. He'd play a slow song like a cha-cha, whatever, right? Just whatever film.
Right.
The great Tony Sheridan, and when I played on the 60s circuit with him, he was a big deal, right? This was, we played in Las Vegas. He walks out and just says to the band, I'm just going to play what I feel. And I felt like those 500 gigs that I did at the Brass Elephant under those conditions, here I am in front of 1,200 people with Tony Sheridan, I won't even try the accent, but just, no, bro, it's okay. Just whatever. That was the rehearsal, right?
Wow.
He walks out on stage and I felt, wow, I'm really prepared for this.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really prepared for this.
Mm-hmm.
I could not have planned that. This guy was never going to send you CDs or charts. I don't read charts anyway, but I mean, there was less than zero preparation,
Yeah.
And it really felt very comfortable. And I had to kind of giggle at myself while I was doing it because I was very present, if I can use that word, where I was, as I was playing, it sounded great. The band sounded great. And all I could think of was everything about this was completely unplanned. And yet I was prepared. How does that happen?
No.
So, the idea of learning things from a bar gig, probably not evident after you've driven through a snowstorm and hauled your amp up 3 flights of steps and played to nobody. But it obviously, it does work out. I was not a fan of playing as a trio. I was not a fan of that kind of loose, almost jam band stuff. And yet it worked out many times in my life to really, be the greatest thing that ever happened to me. So,
yeah. Well, it's just another thing in your trick bag.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You have done a lot of bars, and you mentioned that you aren't a drinker.
Never had a drink. I'll steal a little story from my book. Essentially, I say I've never had a cigarette. I've never smoked pot, even now that it's legal or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
I've never done anything close to an illegal drug. I've never had a glass of wine. I've never had a beer. And I cannot technically say I've never had a drink. And I'll make the story kind of fast, but I have an older brother. My older brother, Steve, is actually a great musician in his own right. And he was, as I always say, the first musician I ever knew, right? So he was in the service and he came home. He's 11 years older than I am. So when I was somewhere around 13, 14, he was home and he was sitting with a friend. He was having a drink.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, what's that? He said, oh, it's called a screwdriver. I had one. He poured another one. I had another one. And I thought, wow, this is cool. I'm drinking with my older brother. This is,
right.
in that adolescent mindset.
Mm-hmm.
So I was just a good kid. I never cut school. I never played hooky. I never smoked cigarettes. The only thing I did was get into fistfights. That's what I did. So I got old enough. I got to be 19. And in New York, the drinking age was 19.
Right.
I'm in my first band. And now after every rehearsal, twice a week, we'd go out to the cool bars and try to meet women, which was so incredibly unsuccessful. But my first time getting ready to have a drink, I'll go up to the bar. I said, give me a screwdriver. He gives it to me. Oh, it's terrible. I let it sit. I did the same thing for about, and I'm trying not to exaggerate, but really it was probably 2 months. Every Thursday night we'd go out. I'd order a screwdriver. I'd take half a sip. It was terrible. I was asking every bartender in New York Can you change the glass? Can you change the ice? Was the orange juice bad? It was just terrible.
Mm-hmm.
And people were laughing at me. They go, why are you spending whatever it was at the time? This is 1977, but
Right.
you're spending $3. Minimum wage was $2.15. So spending $3 on a drink.
Right.
And they said, why do you do that? You're just leaving them all over the thing. I called my brother and I said, Steve, this is funny. I said, apparently you're the best bartender in the world because you're the only one that makes a screwdriver that I can drink. And he said, what are you talking about? And I said, well, remember 10 years ago, it was 7 years ago. He said, that was orange juice. I would never give my little brother at 13 years old. And I said, but you told me. And he said, you had 3 of them in 15 minutes. If a 13-year-old kid had 3 screwdrivers, you would have passed out. I went 6 or 7 years really thinking, hey, I've been drinking.
Wow.
So if I took that, what would you call it? The accumulative, putting all those sips together, it might have been half a drink. Somewhere along the line, I have ordered 40 screwdrivers and drank a total of 1/2, I guess.
Right. Oh my gosh, that's funny.
So, but yeah, so I'm just super clean living, and it takes on a different conversation virtually every night. Somewhere it gets into this conversation.
Yeah.
Every bar I've ever sat at, someone offers to buy me a drink, and we have to go through the story, and then a bartender says, come on, ask Bill, and somebody else says something, and they make a joke out of it and send me a drink, and it's horrific for me, to be honest.
I'm sorry to bring it up.
No, this is very...
Well, I was going to say, because when I first started playing, I would drink maybe quarterly, but never at the job, never on the job. And if I had to drive anywhere, forget it, So I spent a lot of time in bars, sober, and it's not the fun. How do you get through it? I guess do you still enjoy playing clubs and bars? Because it seems like you do.
I love it. But what's really,
how do you deal with drunks?
See, this is the funny thing. Forgive me, because I'm certainly not making fun of anybody who has a problem.
Right.
I've already said I know nothing about alcohol, but I'm an expert on alcoholics. Because I dealt with them.
Right.
And what's always interesting to me is because I'm the only sober one by 1 o'clock in the morning, right? Even the bartenders have had drinks at that point. I am like the bellwether. So on Monday morning, when people say, wow, did you see Jimmy the other night? Wow, did you see? And I'm thinking, no, I saw you with Jimmy and you were drinking as much as he was. Everybody thinks the other person drank more. Everybody thought the other person was embarrassing themselves. And I'm sitting there. I hate to be judge and jury.
You're the ref.
Yeah.
Yeah, you.
I got the lowdown.
Right.
Kind of thing, so.
That's very interesting. You're a good person to have around, actually.
Or a horrible person, because I'm the one who busts you.
Right. Well, it's funny that you already kind of brought it up, but I talk a lot about college on here because I went to Berkeley for a minute and stuff like that. But I think that the whole bar thing is an education that you can't really buy, and it replaces a lot of stuff, in a way. You already kind of mentioned that it helped prepare you for this gig. Are there other things that you think you got out of playing in the bars that you wouldn't get out of a school? Yeah,
I mean, I'm sure I got a lot of things. The idea of going to school, which you did, you read charts. You know how to read music. I have no idea. If you grabbed a guitar right now and pointed at a fret on the string, I wouldn't know what it is. And that's the truth.
Got you.
If you say G, yeah, I got that. But if you said, oh, add the 6 with the minor, whatever, I can play it by ear, but I don't know what you're talking about.
Right.
The thing about bars, playing as often as I did, I played guitar for a while. And then I'd play bass, and then I'd play with a 5-piece band, and a 2-piece band, and a wedding band. And so the idea of the whole bar thing was you walked in sometimes with different people, and the different singer would play it in a different key, or the drummer would play it faster, or you'd play in this little place where you're stacked on top of each other. So it was more than just the music.
Right.
It wasn't just reading notes on the page or learning songs. It was the whole groove of getting into, I have to get there early enough to set up, still splash some water on my face so I don't look like I just rolled out of bed. If I have any kind of cheat sheets, I have to put them where I can see them, because you're in a bar, there's not like spotlights and you don't have a road crew helping you out.
Right.
The entire soup to nuts, as they say, there's no better place to get it than in a bar.
Yeah.
Because you know that you have to load through the back door and walk through the kitchen. And
yeah.
And so that's an art unto itself. I think a lot of people don't realize that.
Yeah. Not to mention playing for 4 hours at a pop,
Oh, and being on your feet. Yes, just standing up that long. You're on these cement floors with a shag rug thrown over it.
Yeah.
And that's your stage. And my God, my thighs were aching by midnight. You're sitting there going, I'm getting too old for this.
Right. Well, it's interesting. You said you saw me from the brass element to the Staples Center. And now you have gone from the brass elephant to one of the biggest, gigs in the world, Neil Diamond.
Neil Diamond, yeah. That was quite a transformation for me.
So how did that gig come up?
Wow. This could be the 3-parter that will take 12 hours.
Is there a 20-minute version?
I'll cut it in half so it's only 6 hours long. Believe me, your listening audience is going to love it. Yeah. Essentially what happened was this. I had just gotten off a plane that day. I was doing the British invasion thing with Denny Lane from Wings, Terry Sylvester from the Hollies,
wow.
Mike Pender from the Searchers, and it was also with Peter Asher and with Chad and Jeremy. So it was just a great bunch of stuff. My rhythm mate was Liberty DeVito, great drummer from Billy Joel.
Never heard of him.
Yeah, who just came out with a book. I wouldn't mind my buddy Liv.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
very cool.
Just to go a sideline, I have I think it's a Facebook message or a text from him from about 5 years ago, where he sends me a note and says, "Hey, Bill, I love your book. I've been thinking of writing one for years." And I wrote back and went, "Well, as soon as you write it, I'll buy it." Liberty's book just came out
that's so
last
cool.
month, so it's a great book if anybody wants to buy it.
Oh, that's
so
great.
I'm fly home, and anybody who's ever been on the road knows this feeling. You get off the plane, you go home. There's no food in your refrigerator because you didn't go shopping because you've been gone. I have a bag full of laundry that I have to do. I haven't been to the bank, all this stuff.
Right.
So I'm running around town doing that stuff, and I get the phone call, and I can't hear what the guy's saying because my ears are stopped up from the plane, and the guy starts talking, and I said, "Can you repeat that, please? I'm sorry, I did not hear what you said." And the guy, in this very serious voice like this, says, "Yeah, Bill, anyway, we need a bass player, and you come highly recommended." And I said, "Great, what's the name of the band?" Now, he had already said this, but I didn't hear it, that first 15 seconds. So I said, "What's the name of the band?" And he said, "Neil Diamond." And I waited for the word tribute, right? Because I'm thinking it's a Neil Diamond tribute band. And again, I've told this story so many times, and it's almost word for word, but I said, "Wow, who recommended me?" And he said, "Well, Don Was." Now, Don Was is a magnificent producer, has been around for a long time, done great things.
Yeah.
And I said, "Well, that's interesting because I don't really know Don." I had met him at a gig years and years ago where he just went, "Hey, man, sounds great," that kind of thing.
Right.
And so the manager, guy on the management team, says, "Well, is this your address? Is this where you live? Is this your phone number?" Obviously, you answered the phone. "Here's your email address." And no, I have it from his office. It says, "Oh, call Bill," and something to the effect of, "He's a good guy and he's a good hang." Which I came to realize how important that is. No kidding, because there's a lot of great players that, with all due respect to their talent, you don't necessarily want to be on a plane and a boat and a train and on stage and eating with them 3 times a day if you can't get along with them.
Right.
So as the story progressed, he said, Sam is his name. Sam says, "Can I call you back and work out some of the details? I'd like to see you sometime this week." I said, "Okay." In the next 3 hours, he called me about 6 times. Everything was, "Hey, look, can we do this? Can we do that?" And the last phone call was at almost 9:00 at night. And he says, "Look, I know this is kind of weird, but can you come in tomorrow? I don't even have time to send you charts or CDs. I don't even have a song list for you. Can you just come in?" And my response was, "Hey, no problem. I'm an Italian from New York. This stuff doesn't scare me. Let's go. Let's roll." And he said, "Great." The next day I walked in at 3:00. I spoke to the management and the engineer for about 15 or 20 minutes. And they said, "Okay, come out into the studio. I was by myself with headphones, no band. They played me a track and said, just go, just play. I did that for 2 songs. And I'm thinking, first of all, I don't have a chance in hell of getting this gig. I don't read a note. I play left-handed and upside down.
Right.
There's nothing about this that's for me, even though I would love it, but there's no chance in hell of me getting this gig. And there's that terrible feeling where I'm sitting in the main room with headphones on. They're behind the glass. I don't know what they're saying. For all I know, they're saying, oh my God, what a waste of time. I don't know that there's not 15 guys in the lobby waiting to come in, because I was thinking it was a cattle call, I'm sitting there, and it was probably 15 seconds, but it felt like an eternity. And the overhead voice says, Bill, do you want a sandwich or something, a cup of coffee? I said, no, I'm good. And I'm thinking, I'm just going to grab my stuff and get out of here because, we have other people to see. And there's another pause, and he said, do you have a couple of minutes? And I said, sure. I thought they were going to boot up another song for me. They said, come on in. Well, as I walk through this door coming into the studio, into the control room, the other door swings open, and this guy walks in and goes, I'm going to do my best impression.
Okay, cool.
Hey, Bill. Hi, I'm Neil Diamond. And my response,
that's good.
I didn't mean to be a smartass, but this was my response. I said, yeah, I know. I know who you are.
It's like, what else do you say in that moment, really?
Yeah. So before I go too much further, Neil's the greatest guy in the world. Yeah. Really, the greatest boss, the greatest singer, the greatest songwriter. Wow. He's everything you would think. There is no meeting your idol, and
right. Don't meet your heroes.
Feet of clay and all that stuff. No, he was great. So we're talking for a couple of minutes, and he says, well, we're doing this promotional tour, but we got that covered. And this was in September, so it's actually coming up on my anniversary. He said, but here's what we'll do. This is the end of September. We'll be gone for a little while. If you can come back in November and we'll do a proper audition, we're doing a world tour in March, late February, March. He said, if you could come back and we'll do an audition with the band. And his words were a proper audition. I said, sure. The next thing he says in the most Neil Diamond voice was, we'll send you the material and we'll give you time to do homework. And of course, we'll pay you for your homework. Thank you. I give him a copy of my book because I figure I'm never going to see him again anyway. I may as well. I walk out the door and I'm thinking, well, if nothing else, I'll come back here and meet these guys and maybe I'll make $300 for my homework. Right. That's a good gig. I'm fine. They'll know me. They'll think I'm a good guy. I won't get the gig, but some big name guy will get it. Right. So I pick up my girlfriend at work. We go home to my little apartment at the time in the Valley, and the phone rings, and it's Sam, the mystical, magical Sam. I say to the girls, I say to my girlfriend and her daughter, I said, look, just look at the Chinese food menu. We'll order some food for dinner. I'm going to walk down the hall in my little apartment and take this phone call. So this is what Sam says. First of all, Bill, really appreciate you coming down on short notice. I know it was kind of a strange way to audition. I'm thinking, well, this doesn't sound good at all. And I said, yeah, I understand, Sam. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. I'm saying all the right things. I'm reading down the script of right things to say when you don't have the gig, that kind of thing. Right. As you're being told, you did really well. Right. And I'm saying things like, no, I was just happy to be there. And, it was great to meet the guy. And so Sam says these words. Well, we understand that this was, extraordinary circumstances to come in with no charts and kind of under a lot of pressure. But anyway, Neil loved what he heard, and he wanted to invite you to be the bass player on this promotional tour that we're doing. Wow. And I said, wow, great. When do we go? And he said, we leave on Sunday. And this was Wednesday, right? Or Tuesday, rather. Wow. And I said, oh, no, maybe it was Wednesday. And I said, oh. And he said, do you need some time to look at your calendar? Now, this is one of my great lines. Oh, boy. I said, yeah, let me look at my millennium at a glance. Nope, I don't think I'm doing anything for the next 1,000 years that would preclude me. And he just went, okay. And I went, oh, come on. That was a good one. So I said, well, what do we do now? And he said, well, come in tomorrow, fill out some forms, get measured for a shirt. Wow. And then I came back the next day, which is Thursday, and sat with the guitar player and ran through I don't know, a dozen songs, some of which I knew. And which was funny because when I met Neil that first day, he said, well, for instance, I Am, I Said, are you familiar with that song? And have you heard the song? And I said, yes, because I live on this planet.
Right.
Is there anybody who doesn't know?
Because I'm not 10.
Yeah. So I kind of had to laugh at myself with some of my answers. I don't know why I got the gig.
Right.
I did one rehearsal, and these were not full shows. This was a promo tour. We were doing television shows, so we do 2 or 3 songs. But one of the things we did was, and I didn't know this ahead of time because we didn't even have time to talk about an itinerary. We did the London Palladium, and we did a 1 hour or an hour and a half special called One Night Only, which is still, wow. I see it on television once in a while. And it's brilliant. I mean, it's great. And I remember being on stage saying, okay, this is the London Palladium. The picture of the old Marvin Gaye live record is him standing on that. The next day, we go over to the BBC, and I'm standing there thinking, this is where the Stones, the Beatles, and the London Philharmonic, or the London Symphony, all played in this room.
Right.
And I realized that that's what happens on a Neil Diamond tour. Everything you do is 3 times bigger than, than you thought. It's and the 2 gems, in my crown, so to speak. Since I was a little kid, I'm a New Yorker. Madison Square Garden.
Yes, right.
And the other one was the Hollywood Bowl because I had never been to California. I just used to look at that in magazines.
Right.
And I got to play both of them a couple of times. So there was really nothing about the Neil Diamond experience that was anything less than stellar for me.
Wow.
And it was an interesting 4 years or 3.5 years that I did it. Neil has since retired. I did actually get to record with him.
Wow,
I'm on 2 of the
cool.
records. Yeah, I'm on a Christmas record, and I'm on he did a box set, like a 50th anniversary, and one of the things he really wanted to do was kind of drag a couple of the old songs out of mothballs that he never really finished.
Oh, interesting.
And I did a couple and played, and there was no click track. For those of you that might not be aware of this, you record to a click track, and then you take the click track off, so the band is playing live. Well, there was no click track, so it was a different environment for those of you that are understanding what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Because there were literally, it was tape from 1982 or something,
Oh, so you're playing to previously recorded stuff.
Yeah, stuff they kind of pulled out of the vault.
Wow.
So there's nothing about the Neil experience that was bad for me. I mean, there's just great stories about rehearsals, great stories about dinner. It wasn't just, oh, look, we played all these places. It was, it was every day was just a great experience.
Oh, that's so cool. I love hearing that.
Yeah. No,
because not every gig is like that.
Oh, I've done the other ones.
Yeah.
Yeah. A matter of fact, just to bridge these 2 things together, I have toured the United States playing radio shows, meaning just doing radio shows, 4 and 5 a day, driving 250 miles.
Right.
Starting at 6 o'clock in the morning and ending at 7 o'clock at night.
Right.
I've done blues clubs and festivals and rodeos, and what we used to laugh at is, obviously when you work with Neil Diamond, you don't stay at the Motel 6.
Right.
And you don't play the local theater, which would have been the great gig 6 months before that, right? If I thought I was playing the, whatever it is, the RKO Theater, I would go, wow, this is great. And I'd drive past that and go to the United Center in Chicago.
Exactly, to the arena.
So we had these running jokes with the band where the guys in the band would go, oh, there's a great little place for breakfast over here. And, we'd be in the middle of nowhere, Topeka, Kansas or something. And I'd say, oh yeah, the Bluebird, the Bluebird Cafe or something. And he'd go, yeah, how do you know about that? Have you played the United Center before? And I go, no, I played around the corner. See that horrible little blues club? That's where I played. That's where I know where the restaurant is. You guys are used to this stuff.
Yeah.
So
I know the feeling for sure.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. The first time I went back to Denver and played Fiddler's Green. Have you guys played that? It's like an outdoor, I don't even know if it's called that anymore, but it's a big outdoor shed.
Yeah.
And I'm on a tour bus and I just bawled, just pulling into town. I'm just like, I did it. Somehow I did it.
It's interesting, when you realize, you and I, at our most modest, have to say we've accomplished something.
Yeah.
You know, you can't be afraid to say that, because when you see some of the places we have played and will play, with no shame, and there's no knocking it, but you do have to look at it and go, I got a couple of feathers in my cap, and this was worth, whether it was going to school or working those 2 jobs, you know, where I was mopping a floor and then running out and doing a gig. There was a culmination to it that worked out okay.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the part that they can't take away from you. You know, like I could run out of gigs tomorrow, which, you know, I mean, we're in the midst of a pretty scary time. You know, this could all go away tomorrow, but you can't change the fact that I did this, I played there, you know, and I think as musicians, those are our medals, you know, and even if they're just memories. Yeah. You know, or I have, you know, probably everyone has a pile of backstage passes. I have them spread all over the place, you know? Absolutely.
It's absolutely funny that you say that, because I have so many things that if you look at the laminate, you know, what we call lammies, you know, sometimes you look at the lammy and it'll say, I don't know, the Roanoke Blues Festival. To the casual passerby looks at that and goes, wow, you must have played to 20,000 people. No, I played to 7 people. You know, I played to 7 people that stood on a haystack for a couple of minutes, and that was about it.
So getting to like, back to Neil Diamond for just a second, like, so he's a musician, and so is he pretty particular about the parts that you're playing, and is he involved with all of that? Is there a musical director that handles that, or? You
know, when I was there,
or was he, I should say, I guess.
Yeah, well, he's. It's kind of a roundabout question, because the first thing they said to me when I got the gig was this: Neil knows what he wants to hear, and more importantly, he knows what he doesn't want. Right? Now, for a guy like me, that was great news, because again, if somebody hands me a chart and says just play this, well, I had to memorize the whole show. That's what I did. I memorized every note. Right. And it's 45 songs or something, and I memorized every note. But what would happen would be this. If it's okay for me to kind of give, a little shout out to my bandmates, because they're just the greatest people. I mean, everybody in the band was kind of a legend. The drummer was Ron Tutt. Ron Tutt from Elvis, if nothing else. Oh, wow. Yeah. Ron Tutt played on more hits. I won't even go into his resume because we'll go too long, but Ron played on with everybody. The background singers are my favorite people in the world, Maxine and Julia Waters, who have done everything from Gonna Fly Now from Rocky, the theme from Soul Train, just everything all the way up to, Adele just a couple of years ago. So it's not like they, stopped working. Right. And they are just the most beautiful people in the world. I love them dearly, and I keep in touch with them to this day. So here's all these kind of people on stage. Right. And Neil would just say something like, that second verse, let's give it a breath before I come back and sing. Now, if you're reading, what that means is it's 13 bars or 7, something weird. And a person who might be a little too musical for his own good at that point, your initial response is, well, no, that means we're ending on a G sharp and we need to get back. Right. Okay. I can't really explain this, but I witnessed it 100 times. Neil would say something like, let's just give it a little breath because I want the audience a chance to respond. Now, Neil Diamond saying he wants the audience to respond, that's essentially, to me, is like Joe Montana telling you how to run. Listen to Joe Montana if you want to win a football game. Right. Yes. So we would all just we got into the habit of going, okay, Neil, as sure as we're sitting here, that night, we would come out, we'd play the song, and we'd hold for that extra 2 bars, whatever that supposedly weird thing is. Neil would put his hand up and wave to the audience and get a standing ovation. He knew that he needed that breath to acknowledge the audience, to acknowledge the band, whatever it was. It was the magic touch. I couldn't explain it. You'd have to see it. You just have to see it. Yeah. So I would play out a little bit. I would play, not overplay, but I'd play a couple of things. And I had to immediately get out of the habit of saying, oh, is that okay? Right. Because he would they say, no, he'll tell you if he doesn't like it. So I just did probably 90% of the script, so to speak, what they had been playing.
Right.
And then I'd add a little something, and if nobody threw something at me, it was good.
Yeah.
That's kind of the way I looked at it.
Yeah. There's a lot of artists that are the same way. Just they'll only talk to you when you're doing something wrong. Musically anyways. But
I remember you telling me a great story about that. I don't want to embarrass you again.
Oh, go ahead.
I won't mention the artist. I'll let you, because if it's something.
Okay.
But you said that there was one particular passage that you were playing, and you kind of blew it, and you knew you blew it. Obviously, you didn't need somebody. And the musical director said something like, only play what you can play.
Just play what you can.
Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
I do remember that. And it was like my first pass. And I'm like, I'm just trying stuff, he's like, oh, do something. Okay.
Yeah.
Then, okay. Right. Yeah.
Well,
that was Kazu Matsui. I'll say it.
Okay.
He was a tricky dude.
I mean, brilliant talent.
But also Japanese, they're very direct people.
Yeah.
We used to tour over there a lot, and I had to teach the backstage director to say please, because usually it was just like stand by.
Yeah.
And I was like, who you think you're talking to? Like, stand by, please. That's how we, be nice, man. So, but you learn to love it after a while, because they're not going to be dishonest.
Yeah.
Everything that they're thinking is coming right out.
Sure.
It's after a while, once you get used to it, but
You probably told me that story 15 years ago. And
exactly.
I promise you, I remember it. See, I told you, I can memorize a show of 45 songs.
Yes,
I remember everything you ever said.
Well, now I'm nervous.
Oh, you should be. Yeah. Well, along those lines, just to kind of tie these things together, I take great pride in knowing what I can do and what I can't do. I have never, this is not me being, this is not false modesty on my part. I've never been a chops guy. I never took lessons. So I'm kind of a heart and soul guy, and, kind of a rock R&B guy. I'm not a jazz guy. I'm not flashy. And one time in a rehearsal, I did a little slap. Now it's probably what I do worst. Okay. Playing left-handed and upside down, just the technicality of it is weird. And it's just not my thing. But I was kind of all things, my great buddy Ron Tutt, the drummer, says to me, you should do that. And I said, Ron, who's played with every great bass player. And I went, Ron, not really my thing. I'm the new guy. And he just said, I think Neil would like that. So we used to do the song Cherry Cherry, right? And everybody would take a solo in a rehearsal. And I have the recording of the rehearsal, which I'll probably have it buried with me. I did my little version of a slap thing. All of our great bass player friends, you included, would listen to it and go, wow, that's not exactly accurate. Okay, it wasn't my best performance. Neil, in the rehearsal, goes, wow, Billy, I didn't know you could do that. So I would do it on stage. Now, again, this is really not about me. It's about Neil's ear and his connection with the audience. Yeah, my 5 friends that are sitting in the audience are going, oh, Bill, I don't know if I would have done that. The other 19,000 people loved it, right? Because it was just, something just a little different.
Right.
So I always pride myself on keeping the parameters pretty tight. Like, no, I would never do that in a lot of other instances.
Right.
But this one just called for it. So I kind of felt like, there are those actors that they're a great Shakespearean actor, and they just want to go on stage and do a little comedy because they've never done it before. And, they're kind of looking like, I don't know how well I'm going to do with this, but I'm going to just push it, That's how I felt. It was, here I am in front of all these people, and I'm going to start trying to play like Eric Baines, and it might not work out as well as it did. So that was fun.
I have to confess something. I love books, but I don't love reading. And it's been something that I've wrestled with since I was a kid. I can read. I have read books, but they're very time consuming, and I've spent most of my time trying to build a music career, which takes a lot of time. But one thing I definitely do a lot of is drive in LA traffic on my way to a gig. And there's a solution that combines those two situations, and that's called audible.com. Audible has thousands of audiobook titles, and you can listen offline anywhere, anytime. The app is free and can be installed on all smartphones and tablets. And they have just a ton of music-related titles, like All You Need to Know About the Music Business by Donald S. Passman, How Music Works by David Byrne, or Music Production Secrets by Calvin Carter. And you can get a free 30-day trial right now if you visit audibletrial.com/divebarrockstar. That's audibletrial.com/divebarrockstar. I'd like to take a second to thank you for listening to the Dive Bar Rockstar podcast. As a new podcast, getting the word out is a vital part of what it takes to keep the show on the road, or off the road, as the current case may be. If you would like to support the podcast, all you got to do is subscribe wherever you listen. And if you have an extra minute or two, please leave a review. You can also share and follow the podcast on your social media apps. Okay, enough begging. I hope you're having fun. And once again, thank you for listening. You know, this gig kind of came late in your life, you know, and
Very late.
That must make you appreciate it more. Do you think if this came younger in your life, you'd be able to? Because it seems like you're a person who really is soaking in every minute of it, or it was, you know, when it was touring, and being able to appreciate it for what it is. If that had come in your 20s, do you think it would have? I'm
almost sure I wouldn't have appreciated it as much, because I have a couple of there's really poignant moments that they weren't huge in any other respect other than I remember when I was in New York, I used to play Greenwich Village all the time, which is the mecca of music, right? And again, I won't mention names, but there was a guy that I knew, a drummer, who got one of the biggest gigs with one of the big pop stars of the 80s, right? In the middle of the tour, they come home for a little while, or the tour is over. I forget exactly what the thing was. And there I am on Bleecker Street. And I see this guy, and I didn't know him well, but hey, Louie, how was the tour? And he says to me, great, you got a gig for me?
Yeah.
First words out of his mouth, because that tour is over. You have no promise of anything else. The star made $30 million. They're in no rush to go back. You have been making a decent living, but now all your contacts dried up. You don't have any club gig. You can't come home and just jump into those club gigs. And really, club gigs pay what they pay. So you can't say, hey, I'm demanding more money.
Right.
There's no more money to have.
Right.
So I held on to that. And I remember thinking, when I get my shot, I'm going to hold on to it with both hands. I'm going to make myself indispensable to these people. And I'm going to make sure that I have a ball. I'm going to be the most gracious rock star you've ever seen in your life. And I really followed up on that. I was the guy out there taking pictures, signing autographs, you know, because I just felt like, well, no, I waited a long time to get here.
Yeah.
I'm going to make everything count. And when it's time to go, I'll go. But being able to tour the world first class.
Yeah.
With one of the greatest singer-songwriters in history, when I was 55 and 59 years old, was amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. You know, and I could never, ever thank him. I speak to him once in a while. I have spoken to him, I should say, you know, over the last couple of years. And I, at the risk of getting too emotional here, but I honestly said to him, I said, Neil, I will tell you this. If before I die, I hit the home run in the 7th game of the World Series, walk on the moon, and become president of the United States, on my tombstone, it's still going to say Neil Diamond's bass player, because I wouldn't really care about those other things as much as this. And I do honestly feel that way. It changed my life. You know?
That's so great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Well, good for you, man. When I heard you got the gig, like, no matter what you think, you just said in your story that you're not the guy for this gig, but when I heard that you got the gig, my immediate thought was, that's perfect. This is a gig. This is a perfect gig for me. Like, I'm just so happy about it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And a lot of times you hear about guys getting gigs and you're like, oh, geez, why didn't I get that gig? Or why what's that? That's not the right. This was like perfect.
Well, thank you.
You know,
no, I mean, it's interesting because, like I said, you know, you've done some cool gigs. I mean, you know, Dwight Yoakam is a pretty good gig.
Yes.
The Kiko Matsui gig was a great gig. You know, it was a different kind of gig.
Yeah.
You've played with a bunch of my friends that I know from all different areas and all the different bands,
Right.
And so I always kind of kept tabs on what you were doing, because it was a great thing, because it's a great feeling for me, probably for you too. If I'm driving on Sunset, if I'm driving down Broadway in New York City, or if I'm driving down the Vegas Strip, it's great to look at the billboards and go, wow, Shania Twain. Hey, that's our buddy Derek Frank, who was on here, great bass player, great dude,
Yeah.
Oh, Dwight Yoakam's playing over there. Oh yeah, that's my buddy Eric. Maybe I'll stop in. I don't care about free tickets. Let's go grab a burger.
Right. Yeah.
It's almost like the community, the musical community at that level is so tight, and so giving.
Yeah.
That everybody's happy to see. Everybody's happy to see somebody go up the line.
Well, I think you nailed it earlier too, when it's like, it's more than just being a great player. You've got to be a decent human being to like be on tour with people. You're moving in, you're essentially a roommate as well over sometimes the worst of circumstances.
Sure.
You got to be able to roll with the punches and be a cool, nice person. So when you get to a certain level, most guys are nice guys, you know, when it comes to musicians.
Yeah, I mean,
artists, who knows? That's a different thing. But
it definitely is. Yeah, I mean, my credo has always been, I'm not a great musician, but I do a great job. So again, I mean, I'm a pretty cocky son of a bitch about what I do.
Yeah, and I think you're selling yourself way short, by the way. But it's a refreshing attitude to hear.
Well, I mean, I kind of live and die by my ears, not my fingers. There are guys that can play. I mean, we go to the NAMM show and I just watch these guys. I watch YouTube and I see these 12-year-old kids. I go, oh my goodness, I would never be that, and I never will be that. So I make it up, hopefully in other ways, But it's a bit like losing one sense, if your eyesight starts to dim, probably your hearing gets a little better, that kind of stuff.
Right.
I just looked at it. Well, if I'm not gonna be the chops guy who can read and play everything, I'm gonna have to be the heart and soul guy. I have to be the nice guy. Maybe I'll be the funny guy.
Yeah,
I'll be the guy who keeps everybody light in the hotel lobby or in the airport while we're waiting.
Right. But you also have a great voice. You're also a singing bass player, which, did you sing on the Neil Diamond stuff or?
No, they actually told me right away they really didn't need me. We had Maxine and Julia Waters singing. So that's kind of like, that's the two-person choir.
We're good.
Yeah.
But that's another great, combination. There's not a lot of good singing bass players, honestly, even in LA. There's a handful for sure, but that's such a awesome. It almost makes up for, okay, I don't play upright, or I don't do this or that, because I sing as well. So it's like, well, that's enough. You know what I mean? Like, that's a pretty amazing thing. And that now you're filling two chairs with one guy.
Yeah.
And the fact that you sing makes your bass playing more musical. And sometimes that's what's needed.
Yeah, I mean, again, I love cross-referencing your other shows because I'm a big fan of your show. And congratulations on this whole thing.
Well, thank you, man.
When we talk about singing bass players, for these last however long it's been, if someone calls me and I can't do it, my two recommendations are Eric Baines, Jennifer Oberly, who's my dear friend, right? She sings like a bird. She's wonderful. She plays.
Right.
And there aren't an awful lot of people,
right? Which
is where you get into that sticky part, because you go, this guy's a great bass player, but he doesn't sing.
Right.
And I can't sub for him. If he's doing some jazz gig, some fusion gig where they're reading, I'm not the guy.
Right.
I'll give you that one, but that's not me. I'm the guy what my biggest strength is, honestly, is like the club gig, the wedding gig, where you have to know a million songs.
Right.
And oh my God, the bass player got stuck. He got two flat tires.
Yeah.
I'm in at the last minute, no rehearsal. No one has to yell out a key. I'll sing the high harmony, the low harmony. I know a million songs. That's my strength. Just keep me in my wheelhouse and we'll be fine.
Right. But that's great to know about yourself too. And a lot of guys, I was just reading a bass player about Lee Sklar, and he's doing an interview, and I'd love to have him on the show so I could actually ask him about it. But he said he doesn't play with a pick. He doesn't slap and pop. He's one of the most recorded bass players of all time. Yeah. Legendary dude. But he's another guy that's just, this is what I do, and this is what you hire me for, and that's important.
It's odd. Well, I won't say odd, but of all people for you to mention, Leland Sklar is one of the most recorded guys. Funniest guys if you know him.
I've met him once.
Yeah. Well, I'll say we're pseudo friends in the sense that we don't hang out together, but we certainly know each other.
Right.
And when I first got the gig with Neil, a couple of the guys in the band, unbeknownst to me, called Leland and said, "Hey, do you know this guy, Bill Cinque?" And Lee said, "Yeah." And they said, "Well, it looks like he's going to be the guy." And Leland, love you, thank you, said, "Oh, no, Bill's going to fit right in." Right. So a couple of months later, I go to this Christmas show that Peter Asher was involved with.
Yeah.
A bunch of great players. There's Judith Owen, if you know.
Judith Owen, yeah. I've been to that show as well. Maybe we were even there the same night.
We actually were.
We were.
Yeah, we were there.
Because I had just done a gig with Jeffrey Allen Ross, and he was playing with Peter.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Jeff is my work wife, so to speak. Leland is on stage, kind of tuning up, got off the stage, ran into the audience, and gave me a hug and went, "Bill, man, we heard about the Neil gig. Tom Hensley, the keyboard player, longtime keyboard player, said, I spoke to Tom and I said, yeah, everybody was really happy with you." I said, "Lee, man, that is just the greatest thing, because here's this room, 250 people, 300 people all turn around saying, who's the guy with the ponytail that knows Leland Sklar?" This woman sitting next to me says, "Oh, apparently you're playing with Neil Diamond. Congratulations." And I said, "Well, let me tell you, that guy right there, Lee," I said, "I should probably send him a royalty check because I've stolen every lick he's ever played." Right. And the woman says, "Yeah, he's a great guy." I said, "Oh, do you know him?" She says, "Yeah, I'm his wife." I went, "Well, it's a good thing I didn't say something horrific."
Yeah, exactly. Right. I subbed for you on, I think it was you or Jen. I think you were both kind of doing the Peter Asher gig.
Yeah.
And so I subbed for somebody, and it was the first time I had done it. And so I went to Jeffrey Allen Ross's house. He's a phenomenal multi-instrumentalist singer from Badfinger forever. Really amazing voice, and everything about him. But anyway, and he had mentioned that, we called Lee Sklar and he couldn't do it. And I was like, wow, I'm on a list with Lee Sklar. If I've done nothing else with, with my life, then I'm on that list. Okay. I'm somebody.
But it's good that you can say that, though, because, I think a lot of people might look at you and just go, well, obviously you're with Dwight Yoakam. You're doing some pretty big gigs here.
Right.
Kind of with the presumption that you ran out of idols, right? That you don't look to somebody that you don't put on a record and go, my goodness, what a great record,
right,
from somebody else. And I always kind of giggle at that, because we all have those people that you just go, man, I saw this show at the Staples Center, but I can't wait to go to that little jazz club in Glendale and see that drummer, because this guy, I'm going to sit there in a room with 13 people, but this guy is killing it.
Yeah.
We all have idols and people that we look up to.
Right.
And when I see those guys, I'm a little kid. I'm not too cool to be a fan. I'm like the teenage girls in the front row at Chase Stadium with the Beatles. I'm just sitting there and I'm mesmerized.
Yeah.
And I think some people kind of leapfrog over that. They think, no, you probably don't feel that way anymore. I go, no, I'm probably feeling more like it.
So you mentioned that you're a left-handed bass player, and I want to talk about that for a second, because to me, there's kind of three ways you can do it. You can just learn to play right-handed, or you can turn it over and restring it and put the low strings on top, or you can do what you did and other guys have done, just turned it over. So what was the impetus for that? Why
Essentially,
that way?
There are three ways to do it. The third one is the most impractical and the most expensive and the most ridiculous. So if that gives you any indication of what's going on in my head, it's probably the same story as a lot of other people. I was a little kid. I mentioned my older brother, Steve, had a guitar. Mm. He went into the service, and I picked up the guitar when I was, 7 or 8, clunk, clunk, clunk. I do remember this part. It always gets a laugh. I remember the first thing. If you remember the song, great song by the Stones, Paint It Black, there's kind of a drone sitar, down, 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 right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. I somehow learned to kind of slop around with that lick. And that's all I played. I didn't know any chords. I didn't know any notes. I was playing that. I was 8 years old. Who cares, right?
Right.
One of my friends, or, one of my friend's older brothers, someone who's old enough to realize, said, everything about what you're doing is wrong. You should flip the guitar over and play right-handed. And my honest response was, I already learned how to play Painted Black. Well, I'm not turning back now. I had no idea that there were 45 years ahead of me that I would be playing, professionally.
Wow.
And I just kept going. And I didn't play it for a little while. And then I played a little bit. And I was playing guitar for a while. And as I like to say, I came from the school where you make as much noise as possible. So I would play in an acoustic duo, which I love. All the other acoustic duos were playing Neil Young, Cat Stevens, whatever in the 70s. I was in a duo that we were doing like Hall & Oates and Stevie Wonder and Chicago. Like we were reimagining songs before reimagining was a term. And I loved everything about it because what would happen, I can pick up your right-handed guitar and just flip it upside down. So if you and I were playing as a duo, which maybe we should do sometime, when you're playing an E and I'm playing an E, it sounds different. It's almost like a piano chord. My major sevenths are a different fingering. I do weird stuff.
Yeah.
It's just a different tonality, And
Interesting.
So we developed this thing. And so essentially what happened was I became the guy that it wasn't that I was a great guitar player, but people went, oh yeah, the left-handed upside down guy.
Yeah.
That was kind of my claim to fame. Some people had a mohawk, right? And you could see that from 50 yards away. Well, I was the left-handed upside down guy, and it kind of became my my tag, my moniker. So I don't recommend it to anybody. I have to have all of my guitars reworked and customized. Either I have to buy them from the factory.
Interesting.
I go to a guitar store, I play the right-handed model, and then order the left-handed model and have it all switched. So you have to change the nut, you have to change the saddle, you have to change the pickups, the angle of the pickups.
Wow.
It's not a simple thing. And some luthiers love me because they go, wow, this is something different because I've never done this before. And other guys just hate me. They just go, why are you doing this to me?
Like I spent years designing this bass.
Yes, exactly.
Now I've got to undesign it all.
Exactly.
Let's talk about your book. Because it's almost, you brought me one, which is awesome,
I did?
a physical book, because I've had it for years on my phone. I'm a fan as well.
I appreciate that.
But it seems to become kind of a calling card, for you. How many books do you bring with you on a regular journey throughout the day?
I have them honestly, I always have a couple in the car. Cool. I call it the most expensive business card I've ever had because I really didn't sell a lot of books, but it was the best investment I ever made because, again, I was the guy with the book. Right. So you went and auditioned 50 people. Oh, the left-handed guy with the book. Yeah, the book was funny. Let's give him a call. Right. And it's a hilarious book. It's really great. Thank you. It's just stories from your life, and lessons and how long did it take to write it? Besides a whole lifetime. Yeah. Well, it was an interesting thing. When I first started writing it, I think it was about 80 pages in 2 months. And I thought, well, this is going to be the easiest thing I've ever done in my life. I spoke to another author, not a musician. And the guy said to me, there's something about a book that if you really do it from your heart, it's probably going to take you 5 years. And I said, oh no, you don't know what you're talking about because I am the smartest man in the world. Right. I've written 80 pages in 2 months, which means I can write 160 in 4 months, and this will go, and with this will be a piece of cake. It was 5 years. Wow. It didn't take me 5 years of struggle. It took me 2 months to write 80 pages, and then I did nothing for 4 years. Really nothing. I couldn't even tell you why. I don't know if it was writer's block or I just forgot about it or I don't know what. And then at a certain point, I sat down and started reading what I had, revisiting. And I honestly was reading it through the eyes of maybe the casual observer as opposed to the author. And I was reading it and I said, I actually have a voice here. And that's a weird thing to understand as a writer. This sounds like me. This sounds the way I talk. It's got attitude. It's got some bluster. some of it's funny, and some of it is, I know that we're not on camera, but when I put my hands kind of like, hey, listen up, like, I kind of have some of that attitude where like, okay, we told a couple of jokes, I told a couple of funny stories. Let's get down to business. You have to practice. And I don't want to hear about marketing schemes or the girl wearing the short skirt or the guy saying, hey, if I get tattoos. No, forget that. Sit down and practice. I found that I had this voice. And as I was reading it, I said, I need to get back to this. Well, in those next maybe 3 months, I cranked out 200 pages. I rolled out of bed and didn't even splash water on my face. I rolled out of bed at 6 a.m. and stumbled into the other room and started. I was writing. My fingers couldn't keep up with my brain.
Wow.
And it was a brilliant experience. It really was the most enlightening, invigorating, at the same time, meditative and energizing. Because it's your heart and soul. And when I was talking to that friend of mine who was actually he was an author, he was a lawyer and wrote some legal book. And he said, no, you know what happened? Some of it was just text and facts and figures. But when I got into writing from my heart, it was easier, but it took a long time to get there. You didn't.
You kind of have to develop that.
Exactly. Because you had to find that voice. You had to find, if I'm just writing numbers, well, that's easy.
Right.
So it took me that long, but essentially it took me 5 years with a 4.5-year gap kind of thing.
Right.
If that makes sense.
The book is called The Amazing Adventures of a Marginally Successful Musician. Now that you're clearly not marginally successful, you're like a legit successful, musician. Not that you weren't before, it's all in jest,
Right.
But how does that change the way that you view the book? And would you have written anything different knowing that this was coming, or had you written it now?
I'm sure I would have done a lot of things different. Matter of fact, people have been asking me about writing a sequel forever. And the Neil Diamond fan club, they send me notes every day. They really do. They're the greatest fans in the world.
That's cool.
And the thing for me was this. If you were to make the movie analogy, what's the most standard line? The most standard line is, well, the movie wasn't bad, but it wasn't as good as the book. Right. And then when you go further, things that have sequels, it wasn't as good as the original. It was cool. They had bigger stars, but there was more graphics. The car chase, but that original story, I don't know, that kind of thing. It makes you a little gun shy to kind of reboot my own book and go, oh, I actually started writing a sequel, and what I did was, and here is, if there's a red flashing light and a siren that will indicate to the listeners that here comes some more shameless self-promotion on my part.
I have a special sound effect.
Please.
I'll put it in
Yes. It'll probably be the sound of 1,000 people groaning. Here he goes again. I did something recently called the Groove Program, which is my own program that it's like an online masterclass. It's an extension of the book. And what I did was, it's all video. But one of the things I did was I added some written chapters. I didn't want to try to do 200 pages. So what I did was I would do something about recording. And at the end of the video chapter, I would put a written chapter of 2 pages. I did another one on touring and said, essentially, look, not everybody's going to tour with Dwight Yoakam. Not everybody's going to tour with Neil Diamond. Not everybody's going to tour on that level. But there's a lot of things you could learn about doing the van tour, which I've done 1,000 van tours. I loved it. Loved it. Just couldn't get enough of it. And I was, I would break it down and put some of it in writing. And so I thought that was my way of kind of paying a little homage, so to speak, to my own book without writing an entire other book.
Right.
So I made references to some of the things that have happened to me since. And
that's great.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. I mean, it's a bit of a reinvention.
You've been also doing public speaking.
Yeah.
So did the book sort of lead to that or open doors for that as well?
It did.
And isn't the Groove program kind of it's tied up with the public speaking as well? And
yes, that's all. Apparently you have done your research. Yeah, this is all tied together and essentially lying in wait until the earth purges itself from, from this thing that we have.
Yes.
I'm waiting patiently. I'm not pushing anything, but fear of public speaking is the number one fear that people have.
Right. I've heard that.
And Jerry Seinfeld does a bit about the number one fear is public speaking. The number two fear is death. People actually fear public speaking more than death, which means the poor guy giving the eulogy would rather be in the casket. That's his bit, right? So public speaking just never scared me. Mm-hmm. I enjoyed it, and I'm okay with heckling, because it's the bar gig.
Right.
There I am.
Absolutely. There you have it.
I'm naked.
In fact, I think the first time I heard "Come for the Music, Stay for the Comedy" was from you.
Probably.
On stage at the Brass Elephant.
Yeah. Yeah, because, the drunk would say something and the rest of the band would go, uh-oh, and I'd go, I'm up for this one.
Right.
And I would tattoo the guy verbally. So me doing the public speaking thing was one of the greatest experiences. And, when you referenced earlier, when you pulled into like one of the big, the big shed.
Yeah, right.
And you said honestly brought you to tears.
Yeah.
I'm going to try to tell the story without crying. But
well, it's been said on other podcasts, I'm the Barbara Walters of podcast hosts. So.
That's true, yeah. I went to Nashville. I love Nashville. I've been there on and off for years. So I did a series of public speaking. Some were kind of smaller. Nothing was big, but one of the things was at Tennessee State University. It wasn't like a big theater or anything. It was 2 music classes together. So I don't know, 40, 50 people. They were all young. They were all 19 and 20 years old. Mm-hmm. So the professor introduces me. Nobody claps. It's not like, ladies and gentlemen, and people, there's a bunch of kids looking at me. So I started talking, and I started out, I guess the word would be professorial, right? I'm trying to sound like a professor because I'm in school. Mm-hmm. That lasted about 30 seconds because I realized that's not me and they're not digging this.
Right.
So guys are looking at their laptops. People are kind of chewing gum, looking out to the side. And I realized right away, I know I can do this. So what I did was this. I took a breath and I just discarded everything I was going to say. And I said, anybody know what endorsements are? Endorsements is when companies give you free stuff. I had everybody's attention. Right? I really did. This guy has his laptop, and I see there's a bumper sticker on his laptop that says Vic Firth. Now, again, for those of you, Vic Firth is a drumstick company. And I said, and this guy's not really listening. And I said, so for instance, if you're a drummer and you need sticks, well, sticks get expensive, don't they? And he looks up. I said, you play your cards right, you get an endorsement, they send you sticks, they send you strings. Now I have everybody's attention.
Right.
And I realize I'm talking to 19-year-olds. $12 means something.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
These guys are sitting
college kids, no less.
So we're talking, and all of a sudden, I'm not looking at a clock. The professor comes over and says, look, everybody, we're kind of running out of time, but this room is empty. So those of you that want to hang out, if you have another class, go ahead. But those of you that want to hang out, hang out. Well, out of 42, 35 stayed.
Wow.
Right? We stay another hour. Now I'm in 2 hours. I'm done with 2 hours. Another professor walks in and says, look, we need the room, and the room next door is also taken, but these kids don't want to leave. Do you want to just hang out in the hall and talk to them? I stood out in the hall and I said, I'm going to tell you guys right now, I will stay till every last one of you has asked your questions. And if I don't have the answer, I'll tell you how to get them. This one guy who had kind of a Latin accent is talking to me, and he's saying things like, Bill, you can't imagine my heart is swelling because you speak with such passion and your love for music. And he's being very poetic and very... So we're now into 2.5 hours that I was supposed to be there for 45 minutes. Some of the other kids who went to class now came back and are standing in the hallway with me. And I'm thinking, am I now being a distraction because these kids have to go someplace?
Right.
Professor number 3 comes over and says, Bill, if you're not doing anything, I'd love to take you out to lunch. I said, sure. He says, this young man with the accent is my son. He said, I've never seen him so excited. Okay. I'm flipping out because I'm thinking I'm the guy who walked in and went from trying to sound educated and trying to sound lofty. And I just went, you know what? Forget this. I'm just going to be me. I'm just going to talk the way I talk. I'm just going to do my thing. So we go outside to the parking lot and, kind of like, okay, follow me. I don't even know where I'm going. I'm out in the parking lot. I call my girlfriend in Los Angeles. And she said, oh, how did it go? And this is what it sounded like. I went, honey, these kids, I started crying where, I don't know about you, but when I get that emotional, I don't even know if there's tears, but I can't even catch my breath.
Right.
I was so moved that they were so taken that I was communicating like that.
Mm-hmm.
I had to sit there for a couple of minutes and compose myself and then drive. And these guys took me out to lunch. So I'm hoping to go back. I probably would have gone back if this last 5 months had been different. And I'm hoping to go.
Yeah.
It was one of the most incredibly stirring moments where I thought I had that aha moment where, you know what, if you told me I was going to do this 3 days a week,
yeah,
I don't think I'd be disappointed with life.
Wow.
I think this would be pretty cool. So the public speaking thing, it wasn't a big stage. It wasn't a huge audience, but it was a pretty powerful thing.
Yeah. Well, you were probably meant to be a teacher.
For a guy who doesn't read and plays upside down and never took a lesson.
Well, there's other things to know. I started out teaching drumline, marching drums, right out of high school. Like in high school, I was teaching, and then I went to Berkeley, and then I came back. I was teaching more, and then I went to college in Denver for a minute, and I was still teaching. And then there came this point where I had to make a choice. It was like, am I going to continue on this path of teaching and stay in school and do that, or am I going to continue as a bass player and try to make it? Mm-hmm. Or whatever that is, and I at some point I just thought, well, if I don't try, I'm going to regret that forever.
Right.
And I could always go back to teaching or whatever. But in the meantime, I didn't finish my degree, all those things that would be required to really do it.
Yeah.
And so as life and time has gone on, it's like this bass thing took off, but I'm never sure that I made the right choice because I've stood on stage in front of 80,000 people and played my bass and had heard my name called over it. And it's never as fulfilling as watching one kid go, oh.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's a hard thing to explain. It's a brilliant thing. And the other thing is just the idea of what we call making it. So in my days, I have played with all these 60s bands.
Right.
One of which, Peter Asher, who I still work with, when I can.
Yeah, amazing guy. Look him up.
Oh,
It's way too much to talk about. And me and Jennifer, Joe Overly talked at length about it, I think, but incredible. I played it once and unbelievable guy.
Oh, no, a matter of fact, I recommended you for that gig because I recommended Jennifer when I got the Neil gig. That was how that whole thing, and they were so pleased with both of you, which is yet even another branch of this story because the idea of sending a great sub makes me feel great and makes me look better as opposed to them saying, hey, you can never sub out anymore. Because...
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you.
No.
It was one of the greatest experiences.
But, the idea of making it, I remember playing in Las Vegas, playing with a great band. Jerry and the Pacemakers was one of those bands that came over in the 60s with the Beatles.
Right.
And it was me and Jeff Allen Ross. Mm-hmm. So we're doing the sound check. And one of the road crew guys, who I don't know, they're not traveling with us, right? Comes over and says, man, the band sounds great. I said, oh, thank you. And he goes, yeah, I know these songs. And he kind of laughed and said, I know these songs because, from my parents, because he's a younger guy. Uh-huh. And I'm laughing. And then he said, so when did you realize you made it? And I'm thinking from his perspective, with all due respect to Jerry and the Pacemakers, is that really what you would call making it? From his perspective, he's like, no, I love Jerry and the Pacemakers. I have all the records. I've been listening to them since I was a little kid. My dad, you brought me up on it. And what it reminded me of, and this is a different story, but my very dear friends, Peter and Tina, their children are my godchildren. I came over their house one time to visit. Peter, who was at the time, I guess was maybe 40, he and his wife, and they have kids that are 6 and 8 years old. They're on the phone with their dad, who is 65 years old in Europe. I walk in the door. Peter's on the phone with his dad and says, oh, yeah, Bill just walked in. He's having dinner with us. And the dad says, is that the guy who played with Jerry and the Pacemakers? Peter and Tina say, who is Jerry and the Pacemakers? The dad, the grandfather, essentially in this scenario, the grandfather says, they were the biggest band. Are you kidding me? I love them. Oh, my God, this is so great. I'm the rock star to him because I'm playing with Jerry and the Pacemakers.
Yeah.
In the same time, in this 45 seconds, they said to me, didn't you do some recording a couple of weeks ago? And I said, oh yeah, I was fortunate enough. I did, it was one song, but I played with a great band called The Fray.
Yeah.
Who had a couple of huge hits. Yeah.
Yeah.
I did a song with them produced by Peter Asher. Here's the dad on the phone, the 65-year-old dad in Europe saying, who's The Fray? And the 40-year-old couple are going, are you kidding me? We have all their records. We saw them in concert. I had just that day, literally that day, come from the studio, again with Peter Asher and Jeffrey Allen Ross. I came right from the studio over there and they said, well, what were you doing today? And I said, well, we were doing there was a kids show. I don't know if it was on Nickelodeon or one of those kind of things. Maybe it was even streaming. Mm-hmm. It was a kids thing called The Naked Brothers. Mm-hmm. Grandfather on the phone. Who's the Naked Brothers? Parents. Who are the Naked Brothers? The two kids jumping up and down. They watched it every day.
Right.
Okay. So in the span of this 90 seconds that I'm in there with my friends in my friend's living room,
right,
there's a guy that I've never met 8,000 miles away who is one audience. The parents, who are younger than I am, had the second audience.
Right.
And then the kids, and nobody knows each other's music. What you're saying as making it is completely different from anybody you might speak to. Because they're looking at you saying, oh my goodness, Kiko Matsui, I have all that stuff. That's the smooth jazz stuff, So
which is another thing I kind of like about your book. It more focuses on like being a working musician versus being a rock star. It's not like how to become a rock star. It's like how to, in a sense, like just being able to make your living playing music is, you've made it, on some level. You're on whatever level it is. If that's what you get to do every day and feed your family and pay your rent, like that's a pretty awesome thing, Well, look, man, this is an hour interview and we're about 2 hours in.
Are we? So let's do part 2 as soon as possible.
I know. No, but it's been so awesome. This has been just such a great conversation. You're full of awesome stories.
I did warn you. I said, bring a second microphone. I'll wear out the first one.
It's true. And I knew it. And it's a roller coaster of emotions lately, and I was just, today I was just like, I'm tired. But I just knew, and I was like, but I'm not going to have to work that hard tonight because, besides us just knowing each other for 20 years, and I know that you're full of so many awesome stories. And I'm like, you know what? I've got 4.5 pages of notes, but I'm probably going to need one.
I'll come back next year.
So thank you for providing the energy and the stories and the awesomeness and for being such a great human. And, no matter what you think, I think you're a great bass player. You're a great singer and you're a great dude. I'm just, it's great knowing you, man.
No, well, right back at you. And congratulations on the show. Cause I truly, I watch it, I listen to it every time and you're like the perfect guy for this. And
well, thank you.
All of our mutual friends, I'm so proud of all of them for their successes and being able to come on and talk about it. And let's do it again. And let's
absolutely.
Let's find a reason to get together. Maybe we'll come in this great studio of yours and write something or record something, or we'll figure something out.
Awesome. Well, thanks, man.
I'm waving goodbye to everybody as we go.
I'm a dive rock star.
The man of many stories. That's my new name for Bill, but lots of great stuff. The title of this episode is going to be called We Leave on Sunday, because I think that's a really important lesson, and it's happened to me, and it is kind of a part of being a touring musician, is that you've got to be able to jump when it's time. You've got to jump on those opportunities. And I've had situations where, and I'm sure Bill was in this situation, we're working musicians. So I've had a situation where it's a big tour. I've got a month of rehearsal and 2 months of touring, which means I now have to get out of my next 3 months worth of gigs, which is another reason it's good to have subs. And if you're moving out here, it's great to meet people that play your instrument, because they need subs if they're touring people. But I've had a couple of situations with friends and colleagues, people that have moved out here and want to start touring, and they tell me this, and that's great. And then an opportunity comes up and I call them and say, we're leaving in a week and a half. And they're, well, I can't do that. I got this job and that job. And well, that's most of the time how this stuff happens. So you need to keep yourself in a position where you can jump at any point. And sometimes you're going to burn bridges. And sometimes, and a lot of times you're not, because everyone understands, and some of these tours are big money and big opportunities. And if that's what you want to be, people will understand. Sometimes they won't, but that's sort of, you got to keep your eye on the ball, The other thing I think is a good lesson, and Bill's a great example of this. He doesn't read, and I talk a lot about college and the importance of that. And that's true. It's going to get you just more gigs, but the other alternative is to know a million songs. And there are definitely guys that are like that, and Bill's one of them. So, if I hand you a book of charts on a wedding gig or something and you just know every song, that's great, and he has great ears as well. Even if he doesn't quite know how to play a song or never played a song before, he's heard it, he knows how it goes. And, that's another viable thing, and something you should just have anyways. You got to work on your repertoire, and you also have to know repertoire. I don't know. Well, I'm going to look that up. But you also need to know whichever town you're living in, there's probably going to be a different set of tunes that I know when I first moved out to LA, I got a gig with a cover band, and they weren't the best, and the gigs that they were playing weren't the best. The money wasn't the best, but they had 12 sets of music that they played on, because they would do like 7 or like 5 nights in a row. And I looked at the list, and they were all the songs that I was seeing on all these other people's set lists. So I'm like, you know what? For one, even though the money was not that much, I had just moved here. I need whatever money I can get. And so I'm going to take the gig for that, but I'm also going to learn all the songs that I'm going to need for every other gig in this city, it seemed like. So learn a million songs and make sure you're learning the right ones. Fiddler's Green Amphitheater opened in 1988 in Denver, Colorado. I saw many shows there when I was a kid. So that's another reason it was so emotional to be coming back to Denver to play the big venue. But it changed its name in 2010 to Comfort Dental Amphitheater for 3 years. And it's now once again called Fiddler's Green Amphitheater. So check out a show once they start up again. And these type of outdoor venues are known to us in the touring biz as sheds. So that's what I was talking about. So we mentioned Taxi, and Taxi.com is an organization that basically finds music for publishers. It's a tip sheet. So you join, become a member, and they'll give you a list of what people are looking for, and you can either write music for the list, because usually there's a deadline that's 2 or 3 weeks out, or if you have a catalog of music, you can submit what you already have, and then they have a panel of judges, basically, and they're super qualified to make sure that what Taxi is passing on is specifically what the publishers want. So it's a good opportunity for the right writer to get some music placed in TV or film, or you can get signed. Sometimes there's labels looking for artists. So anyway, check it out, taxi.com. And I really hope you enjoyed this show.
I'm a dive bar rock star.
Wow, you've made it to the end. I'm hoping it's because you completely enjoyed yourself and are now filled with knowledge and inspiration to move forward with your dreams. If that is the case, and you would like to stay informed of new episodes, live events, and general news, please go to divebarrockstar.com and sign up for the mailing list. If you have any questions, comments, corrections, or complaints about anything you hear on the show, please email me at fanmail@divebarrockstar.com, and you may even end up on the show. We at the Dive Bar Rockstar podcast, with all of our hearts, thank you for listening, and remember, it's all about dreams.